So how have things been? It's been a couple of months since we last met.
It has been a couple of months. Pretty good. I'm in the new house. I got internet in the new house, so that's all pretty exciting. As I mentioned, still don't have lights except that one over there. That's not
Hmm.
going to be useful for this session. Uh, so yeah, there's still some issues I need to work on. Like I don't have power into my bedrooms, but I've been kind of I don't know, kind of burned out, I guess, on like renovating stuff right now. So it's livable, and I'm fine with that. Like I can live with the things that's still around. Like phone's got flashlights and everything, so you don't really need lights in your house anymore. Although I'm still suspicious they might call the cops on me one day. But no, it's been great.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that. Other than the walking around with your cell phone illuminating everything, I feel like at some point you'll need light in your place. But the burnout and renovating stuff, how has that transferred to the rest of your life? Do you feel like it's hard to find the energy to do things? Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure chat's there.
Yeah, it's fine. No, it's mostly just like when I get home, I just sit down on the couch and play some video games instead of doing something useful for the house.
And
That's the only thing. It's like it's not like I don't have the energy, I just don't want to. Basically, like last weekend, like for one thing, like my dishwasher. No, not my dishwasher, my clothing machine, clothes washer, washing machine. Like it was leaking on the outtake of it, and I was like really frustrated. So I ended up fixing that. So like if it really bothers me, I will still do it. But if I don't really bother and I can just sit on the couch and play some games or watch some YouTube videos, I'd rather do that right now.
okay,
But that's about it.
so the high priority stuff is still getting done. It sounds like. Do you see
Yeah.
any of this as a problem? What's your take on your current situation?
Oh no, I think it's fine. It's not a problem. I think the biggest issue I had so far with not having lights was like last night. I needed to, I like taken off my sheets, my bed to like wash it. And I didn't put on new ones. I was like, oh no, I have to do it in the dark. And that's the worst thing that happened so far. So I can live with it. Like the days are still quite bright at the end of the day. So I will have to do it soon, but I will before it becomes a problem for
Okay,
sure.
yeah. I was gonna say just getting a lamp, like a cheap lamp, a single light bulb, that alone can probably go a long way. But it's good to hear that because the way I look at this is it's you will have these periods of turbulence in your life, and you just went through a huge one of renovating the entire house and getting it ready, and now you're living there, and now it's like
Yeah.
okay, breathe, and at some point, I assume you want to get back to something more like what you had before you moved into the house in terms of your just general life and stress level. Is
Yeah.
that yeah? Okay, yeah.
I hope to reach that soon.
Soon. I mean, what is your expectation on yourself that you have for that?
I'll probably finish it up by the end of this month.
Okay. Yeah. So as before the house, yes, probably by the end of the month. Okay. Um, you came up with tenants for yourself, which again, thank you very much for doing and taking seriously. Have you looked at them? Did you forget about them completely? What happened with them? What was your experience?
So I wrote it down. What were my thoughts on this? Wait, did you? Wait, where did my notes go? What? Wait. Oh, yeah. Okay, yes. Okay.
You
Okay,
got
I
it? Yeah.
found them. So yeah. Thanks for highlighting them. So yeah, at the start of it, like I looked at them every week, like you suggested, like you do for yourself. I ended up scraping the second one quite quickly. So did I overcommit to things because I felt like I wasn't really doing that at the moment. I basically like, dropped all my personal projects. I tried to slack on work a bit, make it manageable. So I felt like I was doing all right on that one. So I scraped it. Have I been nice to Remy? I mean, the answer is always the same as like, no, I haven't been. So I kept that one in. Unrealistic expectations on myself. Uh, I think I was doing it less so than before. Like I tried to make a conscious choice of not doing it. I still found myself doing it occasionally, but at some point I stopped looking at it weekly, and I just when walking home or something, I would think about it and I'd reflect a bit on it. Uh, and at some point I dropped the third one, so it was just have I been nice to Remy? I just walk home. I was like, have I been nice to myself? And for the most part, the answer was probably still always not really. Uh, and I find it hard to be nice to myself, I guess.
Well, all right. Looking back, so you were reviewing them once every week at first. You eventually realized numbers 2 and 3 didn't really matter to you too much. But this first one, Have I Been Nice to Ramy, seems to be a mainstay of a problem, right? Like
Yeah.
You and by the way, that have I been nice to Remy? I think that encapsulates that. Okay, you are putting expectations on yourself, but I want you to expand on this in your own words. How do you feel you're not being nice to yourself?
So I think it's actually pretty closely tied to the third one, where I like expect things of myself, where I push myself to do things I probably shouldn't be doing, or that aren't my problem to solve or something. Like during work, still I find myself like I have too much work, but still I'll be like, oh no, I can take on something new. I can help you out, and I don't really have to. And it just puts more burden on myself. Also, I was renovating my own home and like burning out on that slowly. And, like friends needed help. I'm like, oh, I can come help renovate your home. And I'm like, why would you do that, you moron?
Okay, so here's what I'm trying to figure out. For one, like I said, I think the overview of how I see the problem being addressed eventually is step one, awareness. And the tenets were the awareness. And so now that is top of mind for you. It sounds like as you review these, you're like, I'm not being nice to myself. I have high expectations of myself. There needs to be some step of, okay, now I'm going to try to change things. And at first, it should be something very small, something manageable, something that isn't like such a major task that requires a lot of activation energy. So these expectations, um, I don't know if you caught the interview I did with Sharon Lowe, but she told me about a friend that she had who kept a no journal, which is times when she said no to somebody because this friend of hers was a people pleaser. And underneath it, she kind of asked herself a question of like, well, what can I say yes to now? I almost feel like this would benefit you. You've mentioned the people pleasing a little bit, and you sort of have exemplified it in terms of, okay, I'm dead tired, but oh, hey, you need help? I'll go help you. And
Yeah.
that takes from your energy pool. So what do you think could help when it comes to addressing this? How can you be nicer to yourself? What's a concrete action you can take?
I guess saying no more often or not offering help when people don't, ask for it or something. I guess
And
would help. Maybe, keeping a notebook would help. Although I think it would stay empty for quite a while.
well, but that's the thing, right? If you feel like the best way this would help is just by doing a little bit less, and yet you don't see yourself able to do less, then the biggest question becomes, what is that barrier? What happens when you're faced with, hey, somebody needs you, but you don't have the energy to give?
Yeah, I think it's a people pleasing mostly, and I just want to be active. I want to be busy. I want to be helping people. I think those are some really driving factors of most of the things I do. So I guess that's what keeps me. If I'm like yeah, I can be in the couch on the evening, or I can help someone. I'd rather be helping someone.
Okay, and yet now you said I'm okay with being on the couch, as in you seem to have afforded yourself that space because you recognize that you're post renovation. Or are you still doing stuff for other people during this time? Is it stretching you thin?
I mean, I'm no, I'm still offering it to people, but people have been saying no, you don't. So I guess that helps.
Wait, as in you offer, but people are identifying that you're already stretched too thin and saying, no, we don't want your help anymore, or they just don't need the help?
I don't know. It could be both. Like the other day, I had a friend over. I bought something for him for my renovation. I was like, "Oh, like I know you still need to renovate your, garden." I'm like, "Do you need some help with that?" He was like, "No, you're already busy, so we got this."
Okay, I see. They recognize that Ramy is busy. So they are doing your tenant better than you are. they're being nicer to Ramy than Ramy's being nice to Ramy. um,
Possibly.
I do think that you should try to add some awareness to when you can say no to something. And there's got to be a good test for this. And I don't know what that test is because I'm not living your life, but you generally know when you have the room to do something. And I think you'll naturally push yourself to your limit anyway. So when you're at your limit, like, do you think you can identify? Hang on, sorry. Do you think you can identify when saying yes to something is a bad idea and it's just you still do it anyway?
I'm not sure, actually. Like probably if I really want to, I can, but I think I gloss over it intentionally, maybe, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things where, the word should is a very, very interesting word because it's not need or want. It's you feel an obligation to do it. And I've always thought it'd be interesting if every time you converted should to will, if you would act more on it. So, for example, you say, I should say no to this. As soon as that thought crosses your mind, what if you just said, I'm just going to say no? I'm not going to do this plan. I wonder how guilty you would feel. I wonder how long it would take for this to settle with you such that you've got sort of a healthier mix of your activities that you're doing. So here's what I would say. If you self identified that saying no is helpful, then I think what we need to do is let's start with a no threshold. So here's some ideas. Either every time you say yes to something, you say no to the next thing. Or the first time somebody asks something in a given week, you say no to it, or just something like that. Is there some strategy you can come up with or schedule or plan that would sound amenable to you?
Yeah, I can probably try it. I say probably because I think I would generally struggle with. Uh, I was thinking, I don't know if it's like a joke that came up, but you said like no, come up with a structure. I was like, a no a day keeps the doctor away.
Yeah. Well, really, that's kind of how this would work. The doctor happens to be a mental professional in this case.
So maybe like have at least one no a day, and be conscious of like saying no to something, and try to do it once a day or something if something comes up.
Well, do you think that would work? Or at least do you think that would kind of make you more
Mm,
aware of what is going through your head when you do this?
Yeah, I think so. Like I think it's a really low threshold. Once a day, probably say no to like 20 times a day without being conscious of it. So maybe if I just keep track of it, like, hey, you actually already say no this often, but you just, don't do it for maybe the things that matter. Maybe I get more conscious, like, you can do it, so just do it for this thing as well, because you did it like, 5 times today already.
Okay. Well, then look, I think we should set that as the next goal just to figure out how does this make you feel. And, after this experiment, um, how did this make you feel? Did this have the desired effect of actually reducing your stress or activity? And part of the reason I think this is interesting at this particular point is that before all the house stuff, you were in routine A, and that was work and whatever other stuff you were doing. And then you got into house stuff, and that's like routine B. And now you were doing house stuff constantly. Now you're in routine C, which is like cool down from all of that. And you're about to enter routine D, which might look different from any of the past ones. So, in sort of life crafting, I feel like you should mindfully envision what you want that routine D to look like. And this is part of what can help you settle into something that you find better than what you had in any of the previous ones. So
Yeah.
yeah, I do recommend trying this. So I'd like you to follow up on this next time. Uh, the tenant that you have now, how frequently are you looking at it or kind of judging yourself based on have I been nice to myself?
I think it's hard to judge how frequently because it just, occurs to me.
Hmm.
Like, but I get at least once a week, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
I think, right, like it's in idle moments, like, say, like walking to the store, walking home or something, and I'm like, oh yeah, I had this tenant. Like, have I been nice to myself? So it's irregularly, but I think like at least once a week.
Yeah. Some of these things are really, really hard to address, by the way. One of these things I think is posture. It's not something that anyone really takes pride in, like bad posture, right? It's like, well, that's just a thing, and I happen to have it sometimes. And yet, correcting your posture it takes awareness and it takes correcting whatever it is that led to your entire lifetime of doing something a certain way. But yet, bringing the awareness to it frequently, I think, does allow you to address it. So I think the same thing. I think you should probably have a calendar reminder or some active reminder so that it's not just, hey, I'm walking to the store, because you can't necessarily act on it at that time. And, maybe on Monday morning or something, it's right before you get the majority of these requests to do things, or it's Tuesday evening, or who knows what, whatever, whenever people are asking you to help renovate their garden. So, yeah. Okay. Well, I'll write this down. I suggest being more explicit about reviewing this so that you can act on it. But yeah, let's see how the no thing works. What is you have short answer no no kind of for the tenants?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So there was like the answer to tenants, like, did I follow? Like, was I nice to myself? No. Did I overcommit to things? No, not really. And then kind of realistic expectations. So that was like the answer to my own question.
Yeah, yeah, I see.
And then the long answer we just did.
Yeah, I was going to say about the expectations, it sounds like the second one of did I overcommit to things is still intertwined with that. But I think now you're in a healthy state. And so, yeah, like I said, this routine D that's about to happen, let's see how that goes. The next thing you have written here, management training is supposed to start soon. I thought it was supposed to be the end of August. Did it get moved?
No, like that was an estimate. Like we didn't have a starting date or anything. But just earlier this week, I think on Monday, I actually received an email that the program is starting up again. And from what I read about it, seems to be a bit different than it used to be because it was like the all new program. So I'm not entirely sure yet, but I will be seeing. I'm planning a meeting with my manager somewhere this week or next week, whenever our schedules line up, to set expectations and goals for the training.
Mm-hmm.
That's also one of the assignments that comes with the training. Like, hey, sit down with your manager, and talk it through. And yeah, the training is also called leading others and leading self. So it is, set on like, targeting managerial roles and stuff.
So, I'm focusing on the bullet point that I don't think you actually mentioned yet, which is you found yourself doubting if you are up to the task. Is this because you started talking with your manager? Or I guess have the meeting set up with your manager?
No, I haven't set it up yet, but I don't know. I kind of forgot about it all, doing my renovation and stuff like that. And I got emails like, oh yeah, like it's becoming like a tangible things now. Like I'm, taking steps towards, where I want to go. And I don't know, maybe it was like some kind of imposter syndrome, but it's almost like, oh, like looking at what my manager does now, what I do now, like, am I up for it? Can I do it? Can I feel his shoes basically? I don't know. It was just like this moment of like doubt. And I don't think it lasted that long, because like, now I'm not really feeling it anymore, but I do recognize at some point I was thinking this. I was like, oh, hey, what, if I try it and I mess up?
Okay, so it sounds to me like self doubt is at the top, given that you mentioned it twice in that list, and then at the end there. Um, there's one other thing though I wanted to ask about, which is the change in routine. Just to probe and to ask about this, how much do you feel like, hey, my life took a different focus for most of the summer, and now that I think about management and career, the level of importance has changed? Is that part of this at all?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Uh,
I think it's mostly like before it was like a lofty goal, and now it's like, I'm taking step towards the goal. So it's like, it's new, it's scary, it's exciting, and it's like, now I'm more consciously thinking about it, so I'm more aware of like, where I am now and where I need to be, maybe.
yeah. I see. I think that's natural. And you mentioned the could I do a good job sort of thing. How much does
Mhm.
that impact your feelings about this?
I still want to do it,
Yeah.
so it
Okay.
doesn't impact that.
Regardless of the doubts. And let me ask you this because this is another case where it's like you might be putting very high expectations on yourself. Have you ever worked for a new manager? Or maybe not for, maybe have you worked with a new manager?
Yeah, yeah, we actually got a new manager on a different ICT department like half a year ago.
And what has been your experience with that? Wait, sorry. I meant someone who is new to being a manager, not someone who is just new in your life but was a manager for a while. Have you ever worked with someone who
Oh,
is new to being a manager?
yes, but well, like I know one manager, that sit on our floor that was a new manager. Like, and we talked occasionally, but like she wasn't on my team. I don't know like how she worked or anything.
Okay, okay. What I was going to
But
say,
like not anyone I worked for or worked with.
yeah,
Like no.
yeah, I know your manager's been there for a long time and he's going to retire, and that's what's allowing you to potentially move into this role. The reason I ask this is because I was going to say this same reflection of expectations, which is when you work with someone who's new to being a manager, they make mistakes. That's just practically a given. Like, rarely will someone be a great manager right off the bat. And in fact, more often than not, I think people end up being bad managers for a bit of a long time and then decide either they don't want to be a manager or they end up becoming better. Some people stay bad managers. I don't think you would stay a bad manager. The reason I say this is because I think you need to allow yourself, just like everything else I've said, the slack of I'm probably going to make mistakes when it comes to leading people, but that's okay. I will learn from them. Is that part of what this doubt had to do with? I know you said it's fleeting. I know you said you're still going to do this, but where do these doubts come from of wanting to do a good job?
Yeah, probably like I don't want to make a mistake, that like puts the team in a bad position or negatively influences a team member or something like that. I feel like that once you're a manager, if you make a mistake, it reflects on your team or the
Yeah.
people you're working with. Like there's just more consequence to not doing a good job.
Yeah. And yet, I think the flip side of that is those mistakes, as long as they don't have, you don't destroy the entire company in the mistake, it's like, well, there's a way to recover from it. And most mistakes are not the company destroying mistakes, even deleting, production databases. It's like, this probably happens, but I've never heard of a company folding because a database was deleted. It's usually like, well, that cost us a lot of money. Now we have some system in place to stop this from happening again. And there's like kind of a joke saying, which is every sign has a story behind it. Like when you see a sign that says keep off the grass, it must be that people were on the grass and they were doing something. When you see a sign that says, don't feed the ducks, I think it's the same thing with this. It's like every policy at a workplace exists because probably someone violated that policy in the past before it was a policy. So, um, how do you feel about the thought that you probably will make mistakes and it probably won't have such a negative impact? Like, do you sort of, is that your view at a high level? Can you, when you distance yourself from it, does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, no, that seems reasonable. I think like recently, I even have an example where like my current manager, he made a mistake, and it turned out all right. He went back and was like, "Oh, guys, I made a mistake. Let's not do that." Fixed it, and everything's all right. So I know it's not bad in a sense to make mistakes like that, but I still think it's daunting.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think that's the other thing, which is that you can rationally agree with something and yet the impact can be different to you. So I was, in one of these interviews I had done, we were talking about what it is to be offended. And I was talking to Mel and she said, I think it's on the person receiving any comment to choose whether or not they're going to be offended. And I agree at a high
I agree.
level. And yet in actuality, it's like sometimes people just say things that are hurtful and you can't really help yourself and you emotionally respond. Anyway, I think it's good that you're moving forward with this. I guess back to the concrete stuff. You haven't actually set up the meeting yet, you said, right?
No.
Okay. But there's nothing that's sort of amiss about that. You plan on setting it up. There will be a training.
Yeah, no, there's nothing amiss. Like, I just need to align our schedules. Like, I want to do it when we're both in the office so we can talk face to face. I actually wanted to do it today, but I've been stuck in meetings for like 6 hours today, so I couldn't. And then the rest of the week, we're not in the office at the same time. So I'll probably shoot it for like Monday or early next week.
Okay. And then how long is the training series?
It's 3 days, 3 consecutive days, including a night. It's like in a hotel and everything. You just stay there for like 3 days and
Oh
work on
wow.
it.
That's quite a lot. Um,
Yeah.
and everyone who wants to be a manager at your company has to do this?
Uh, I'm not sure actually. I think so,
Okay. Yeah.
but I couldn't say for sure.
Okay. Well, I look forward to hearing how this goes. I guess you setting up the meeting is just you setting expectations with your manager about what you want to get from this. And then the actual training might be, 3 weeks from then, such that you haven't taken it by the next time we talk, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure when the training is. It doesn't say it in the email. Like it just says that they're opening again. So I guess they'll schedule whenever they got enough applicants and stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I want to hear how this goes once you finally do it. It might be that we end up talking about this in session 8 and not session 7, but either way, it should be fine. Um, the Azure trainings, which was another thing I wanted to ask about. Yeah, why don't you talk about this?
Yeah, just so in the getting ready for this, you asked, if I emailed them. I did not. Actually, I'm doubting if I did or I didn't actually, because I know at some point I sat down and I think I wrote the email, and maybe I just never got a reply or I didn't send it. It's either one of those, but let's play safe and say I didn't send it then. But we actually
I appreciate you
we
at
got a
least
new.
thinking about it a little bit more. That's fine. And you didn't have to do it. It's okay. It sounds like, yeah, there's. Anyway, go on. Go on.
I do know I set a reminder for it in my calendar and I got it, and then I wrote the email. I'm sure of that. I just don't know if to send it. But then I was also talking with my colleagues, and he told me that we are getting a new system anyway for like training. So they're not like official Microsoft trainings, but they're through like one of those big training platforms. They also got like the Azure trainings there, like the AZ 103 or 104, 204, whatever they're called. So I'll be doing it on those because those are on demand. You can just do it whenever you want, which suits me quite better than having to follow a predetermined time and stuff like that, I think. Uh, and I think a colleague of mine wanted to do it actually, but there was still a problem with the platform with the licensing or something, so he couldn't do it. Since that was like a month ago, I think, and I don't think I've checked back on it.
Okay.
So uh,
Well, it sounds like if
there,
it's,
there there's if sorry, go on.
I was going to say, if it's December 23rd of this year, that you could still get them done in the last week if you really, really had to, right?
Yeah, yeah,
As,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. What were you going to say? I cut you off.
Yeah, so like there's been ample opportunity to do it, but I've just not been doing it right now.
Okay. Um, the other thing I was going to say is it's kind of unfortunate, but this is one of the few cases where waiting benefited you. Like, if you had been
Oh
on top
yeah,
of this and had set up the meetings and had whatever flown to Canada or something to get the training, you would have been remiss when you found out, oh, I could have just clicked a couple buttons and started this, Saturday night if I felt like it. So
yeah,
that
yeah.
worked out. Yeah.
And this new training platform also has like workshops with it and stuff like that, or like some workspace you can like actually do like coding adjacent to what they're showing and stuff like that. So it actually sounds like a pretty good solution.
Yeah, I think that's the
But yeah,
other
I'll just
aspect of this. You did not like the first training you took, and now it sounds like these are all part of some
yeah,
system where presumably they get feedback and presumably will improve the training such that whoever experiences it next gets all the benefits of the previous ones.
yeah. And I was actually looking together with my colleague at this platform, like we wanted to test it out, like if the license worked and everything. And then, like he showed us dashboard and had like see like, oh, you spent so many hours on trainings, and I think it says he had like 60 hours of trainings. And I was like, when did you do this? So he obviously does a lot of them, and I didn't know about it.
Wow.
Uh,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
that like gave me like a, oh hey, even you like I feel like he's way busier than me and like way harder working and way more pressure on him. And I'm like, you found the time to do this? Like I didn't ask him, but I was like, how did you do that? So I probably just need to ask him like, hey, when do you or how do you make the time for this? Because he obviously knows how to do it.
Yeah, and also that must mean that he liked the trainings. Whenever you see someone's got 60 hours of trainings, it means that they liked, sessions 1 and 2 enough to continue doing more, and then all of them ended up being good. So cool. I hope that helps. But what I want to ask about is you are currently in a period where you have not taken the trainings, and I believe there were two of them you had to take, and yet your team has been using Azure. Have you needed to use Azure more? Have you been affected by not having the trainings? Okay.
No, no, like none of my responsibilities are still with Azure, so I think that also helps me like skirt responsibility to do the trainings right now because I don't need it right now. So that makes it easy for me to say like, oh, I'll do it when I need it. But
Yeah.
it's probably too late by then. I realize that, but
Yeah, well, if you take a training, let's say 10 years ago you had taken an Azure training, it'd be probably nearly useless now because a lot of that information would have changed. Also, you would have forgotten a lot of it. I think it's the same thing here where there's some sweet spot of taking the training far enough ahead of time where you can build on that knowledge. But if you're not using Azure in the meantime, a lot of that's just going to feel like theoretical knowledge, even though you could be applying it.
yeah.
Is there a guarantee you're going to end up doing something with Azure, or could it just be that the rest of your team is constantly handling that and you don't have to worry about it?
No, there is some low priority stuff I have on my to-do list that need Azure. So there is a use case where I could theoretically go and apply it right away
Hmm.
because the thing does need to get made, but it's like a really low priority thing when I got like lots of higher priority things.
And you suspect that they'll become higher priority, these Azure related tasks?
No, I think it's one of those things that stay at the bottom of the to-do list.
So it's possible that this is sort of a distraction and it doesn't really benefit you, and that someone else could take these low priority tasks, or are you the only person who can work on the tasks?
Well, not the only one that can work on it, but it's only my responsibility to do those
Yeah,
tasks.
I see. Okay, well, I will say this. The trainings are probably not super long because it sounded like you had two of them. And even if they take all day, that's 2 days out of the work year. And
Yeah,
also, this knowledge will not go to waste. I mentioned this thing about, oh, what if you did this 10 years in the past? But it's not 10 years in the past. You're going to be doing this and then maybe sometime in the next year or two. And who knows, maybe you end up, once you get over that hump of, okay, now I know some things about Azure, maybe you start taking on more of that work naturally. And maybe you end up doing this management training and you're like, I want to do this stuff now. I want to become a manager. I don't want to do the Azure things. And I don't know. You never know. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that works. Is there anything else on the work radar, by the way? Because I wanted to kind of explore a little bit more here. We've talked about your trainings. We've talked about the C++ project that you had. We've talked about the shift to management and the need to take some time off, actually having taken some time off. where do you stand with work right now? Are you happy with things? Is your manager happy with things?
Uh, am I happy with things? Kind of. Like I feel like at least work-wise, I've been able to rationalize for myself that like, hey, you've had a busy time, so it's okay to like, got a bit of slack on your work. But now I think I typed it later as well. I'm at this point where I'm like, am I still justifying taking it easy or taking advantage of it now? I'm like, where does, taking advantage start and, needing this time stop? Where I'm kind of starting to feel guilty again about taking it still, slower than usual at least.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I also feel like, the last week, I feel like I've been really productive again. So that was, kind of a confidence boost. Like, hey, you're getting on track again at least.
Yeah, I've seen this happen for myself. I feel like you need to trust enough in your own tendencies. Like you have a tendency to do a lot and go full throttle on things. So when you have the energy to, you'll probably just naturally go back to doing a lot and going full throttle on things. And how long since you feel like the renovations toned down? I know you said you had to fix your washing machine and you still got to get lights and stuff, but that's, easier than every Wednesday night taking the entire night spending time with friends or your dad doing the work. How long do you feel it's been since you've had that space?
Yeah, it's been 2 or 3 weeks now.
Okay.
And
The
there's a small amendment to that where I only handed over the keys of my old apartment last week. That was still like a mental stress thing, like still having like, two homes, double costs and everything, like handing it over, like is the final inspection gonna be okay? So like just being rid of all like, the moving stress, I think it's like last week.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say this is not anything to worry about then yet. Also, you just mentioned you were productive and that boosted your confidence. I think it's reasonable to assume that's going to start continuing a little bit more. Um, how do you feel career wise, though? Not even just snapshot in time. How am I? What's the equation of how much time I'm putting into my job? How do you feel about where things are going?
Uh, yeah. So it kind of depends because like I don't think it's like imposter syndrome level, but I always feel like I'm not at the point where I should be yet in my
Mm-hmm.
career. And then I mean like more like my knowledge levels, like how quickly I can churn out code or programs or whatever I need to be working on.
Yeah.
Uh, but then again, I'm also right now spearheading one of our moves to the cloud for one of our big softwares, and those ones that I feel like I'm actually doing really good at
Mm-hmm.
for my point in my career. So it's a bit of two sides there. Like some work I feel like I'm, not at the level I should be at, and some things I feel like I'm doing really good at right now.
Okay. The stuff that you don't feel good at, what makes you like, do you want to be good at it? Is it just I take pride in my work, so I should be good at it? What would
Yeah, I
yeah.
want to be good at it for sure. Like programming is still, my main job I want to be doing. So I feel like, this should probably be the best thing I am at.
There's an interesting thought, which is if you found out all of a sudden you were, I don't know, have you seen Goodwill Hunting, the movie?
Yes.
Yeah. If you found out you were, a math genius and that it somehow didn't translate to programming, would you still want to be a programmer? And I'm not actually asking this question. It's a thought process of if you have a set of skills that nobody else has in the world, that specific combination of things, and there's some probably perfect job out there that makes use of every single one of those skills, and it's probably impossible to find. But in a more concrete way, you could find a job that uses, most of them. Maybe you're a great project manager, or maybe you are really good at testing or something like that. So the question I actually do want to ask is, let's say you found out you were really good at managing people or at any other related role, you're good at designing or something. Would you want to shift into that, or do you want to keep programming as part of your job regardless of if you find out, oh man, there's something I'm just way better at or I like even more?
I'm doubtful. I think I would switch to it because it would mean I'm probably good at it. And if you're good at something, you make less mistakes. So that's like, the pride thing comes up again, and I don't want to fail at something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is why I would want to do it. But I also just really like programming a lot. But I think like, I could still do it in my spare time or something, when I can do it. So I probably would do the thing that suits me best then.
Okay, and maybe this is too on the nose, but do you feel that programming suits you best?
50-50.
Yeah.
This may be a bit of a cop out answer, I know. But I feel like, I'm decent at it, or yeah. I'm good enough at it that I always get my stuff done. My clients are always happy about the stuff I provide. Uh, but I think that maybe my people managing skills are better than my programming skills.
Hmm. The reason I ask this stuff is because there's so much to consider when it comes to a career. And some people make a distinction between a job and a career. A job is something you're just doing and you get some money and it takes up some of your time, but a career is something you're sort of working toward. Whether or not you make that distinction, you still have to consider the next, 10 years or 15 years or 20 years of your life and what you'll be doing. I wonder, there's an effect of if you're good at something or if you're better at something, will you naturally enjoy it a little bit more than the thing you're not as good at? And just based on how much work it takes you. And when people talk about talent, I feel like there's a starting level that you're at, which is almost luck, and then how quickly you grow and where you currently are. And if you feel like your people management skills are better, I know you are working to become a manager, but the timeline on that is now still what, about 5 years or something? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is a route to shifting to it sooner. And it probably involves switching companies, which I know is not something you said you wanted to do. But it does make me wonder, where does that path, the management Remy, where is he happier? Is he more fulfilled? Is he just doing programming on the side and he's loving it and now you're working on your rock climbing thing or the Digimon thing? So I'm just sort of spewing thoughts out there. What do you think about this stuff?
I think the first thought that came to mind with that is like programming is the safe bet.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know I enjoy it, I know I'm good enough at it, to make a living off of it and everything. Where like the management thing is like new and can I do it? Uh, that's the first thought that came to mind with that. Uh, so I don't know
Okay.
if I'd be
Well,
happier like becoming a manager sooner than later. I am really not sure.
yeah. I don't think you need to be able to answer that question. And I think you are going to start getting a taste of this more and more because while the target for being a manager might be 5 years from now, the trainings are going to be in the next couple of months. You'll start talking to your manager about setting some expectations. And ideally, you get some just test run of this somehow. And I'd love if you could talk to your manager about, hey, can you allow me to manage one or two people in name only? Like you don't control their compensation, you don't control it, whatever. You get some taste of it so that you can try it out and see either, oh man, yes, this is great. Like I like this even more. And that way it doesn't take you 5 years to get to the point where you're like, oh, this is a better fit for me. Is there some way you could do that? Do you see that as even being possible?
I don't think so really. The team where I'm at.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
I mean, it depends. Like because I've like I said, I'm managing a project now. I've managed a project last year, but those are all like it's me basically, and the third party. So I am managing the project and myself, but not others. So I'm thinking like, do we have any projects coming up where it would be me and maybe someone else, and I could manage that.
But wouldn't
But
your
I'm not sure
manager
about
have more
that.
insight into that out of curiosity?
Yeah, he probably would.
Could you, if you were to float this idea by your manager and say, look, I've got this plan. I want to be as prepared as I can for it. And I want you to have enough runway too, in case you don't like it, to be able to find someone else to do this maybe. Is there a way we could find a project for me? And maybe he says, you know what, there's nothing now, but thanks for telling me. 6 months from now, maybe something comes up and I can think about it. I think it's at least worth bringing up because something about how you talked about this today made me think I want to pry into this a little bit more. and and knowing that you wanted to become a manager eventually anyway, I just think 5 years is a long time. And it doesn't sound like you're disliking what you're doing. And even what you said about, hey, I wonder if I'm taking advantage of the system. Am I slacking too much? That would worry me if you've been saying this for 3 months, but you haven't been yet. So I'm not
Mhm.
concerned about that. These are just like little signs that make me wonder about this. So yeah, what do you think about talking to your manager?
Yeah, I could probably bring it up in like the same discussion as like setting the training expectations.
Yeah, and I think it combines well with that because the things you're being trained for, you could start trying to apply a little bit sooner. And also, like I said, you just get a taste for it. You'd figure out, do I even like this? Because I feel like maybe I don't know what other industries are like, but at least in software engineering, I feel like there are a lot of people who go from being a developer to being a manager who then hate it and go back to being a developer. And I'm not saying you're going to be that kind of person. I don't think that's going to happen to you, but it happens enough, and I've seen that enough in my career where there's just it's just a very different set of expectations, and also your day ends up shifting too. It's like you said you had 6 hours of meetings today. That might become your average day, and maybe you end up hating
I
that part
dread
of it.
that.
Hmm?
I really do dread having like 6 hours meeting days like every week.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's worth getting a taste of it. And also, maybe the other thing too is maybe the taste of it is exactly where you'd want your career to be. Like, I want to manage just one or two people and I don't have a day full of meetings. And then maybe you'd go to a much smaller company or you'd start your own thing. It's like that can influence the rest of your career. So, yeah, I think it's worth
Yeah.
getting some insight into this. So, these things, e.g., maybe you decide you want to start a company and only manage 1 to 2 people. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts on this topic before we shift to what looks like a hard left into something else?
I was just, dumping some brain thoughts in there. I think I go back to some more things at some point. No, I don't. Actually, no. No, I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay, but no other thoughts you have on this. Everything seems good. You're pretty happy.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I still think like one of the things I enjoy most about programming is like, when you finally do get something done, like you've been working on like this problem for like an entire week, like the joy of finally fixing it. I
Yeah.
think that's just great. I live off that stuff. So, uh, yeah, and that was like the closing thought on it, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. And I agree. I think that is really good. I think. Sorry.
Oh,
I
damn.
apologize. This
No,
cough has
that's
not
fine.
fully gone away. I think that happens in a bunch of different regards, but I feel like there's a more, hey, I put in this time and now I got this output, as opposed to, hey, I manage these people and they got the output. I think they're both satisfying though. But anyway, yeah. So creative writing, what'd you start to do?
Yeah, so I've been, as you know, like I read a lot of books, and you sent me something to read the other day that I really enjoyed reading. And it inspired me, like, I've been having, like thoughts of like, oh, like I think this would make a fun story or something, for years, and I was like, oh, I can't write, I don't know how to do it, how would anyone be crazy enough to do this? Uh, so I never made any time for it. I never tried it. And now, since I live in a new place, I actually take my train to work. So I got like an hour a day of just sitting in the train.
Yeah.
And I just resolved myself to like work on a paragraph, like at least once every train ride, and just see where it goes. So no expectation of finishing anything, no expectation of even having anyone read it, but I just, want to give it a roll. So that's that.
And you're enjoying it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
enjoying it. And then I read it back and I'm like, what did I write down? And then I regret it and then I start over and I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty fun to do it. And then it's like the cycle of that.
Yeah.
No, but I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah. And I was going to say, everyone has to start somewhere. And it doesn't matter what age you start at or what skills you had originally. If you're enjoying it and you do it, you will naturally get better. And also, that's how a lot of people just get started with new hobbies. So I think it's good that you're doing this. Um, yeah. Let me know how that goes as you continue to do it. There's some other thing I want to say here. Oh, yeah. There's a lot of resources now for anything you might want to do, right? If you wanted to do the Azure stuff, you've got now trainings you can access through your company. Do you think you'd ever seek out a group or a seminar or a community college class or something for creative writing?
Possibly. There's also these great lectures by Brandon Sanderson, which is like one of my favorite writers out there.
Yeah.
And he puts them like all on YouTube, like creative classes, lectures, stuff like that. So I've been watching some of that. And I also found that, actually ChatGPT is a really big help for stuff like this because I could just throw in a paragraph and he's like, oh, mind some punctuation here, this spelling is a bit weird. So I think, like it's my idea and I just like ask like, can you check it like grammar wise? And I think it's great for that because it really helps me, where I'm like, I know this sentence doesn't flow well or like isn't correct.
Yeah.
And it can get some great info like, hey, if you just, swap these words around, then it's proper English.
I
So that's been really helpful.
I think that is super helpful. I also think if it helps you with ideation, that's also totally fine. I think I think the questionable part is when you're like, hey, this was a 30% chat GPT written book. And like, I didn't even come up with some of these plot lines and didn't write them out. Yeah. So I think we live in
Yeah,
an,
no, I just use it for like spell checking and grammar basically
yeah.
because I think I'm not a native English speaker, so there's some things where I just know I struggle with, and it's great for that.
Yeah, it is. Also, I don't know if you know this, but if you wanted to publish a book, getting an editor for it is not cheap. So, like, if ChatGPT is your editor for 90% of it, that's still really good.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, what's this? What's your nonogram usage at? You're not doing them anymore.
yeah, they've got no grams.
Yeah.
Haven't been doing them for the like last month or something. Uh, so yeah, there was just something like I said, like I'm always doing something to kill my idle time that I'm still trying to cut down on.
Hmm.
But every time I cut something out, something else comes. So it used to be Duolingo, and we talked about last session. And I just killed my streak the next day because, as we mentioned, like it's just doing that one exercise to keep the streak going and not really learning anything. So I killed that. That got replaced by the nonograms. Since you got me hyped for it, then I kind of burned out on that. So yeah, I'm still blaming you for the nonogram
Oh yeah, that's
addiction.
fine. But now you're back to
So I
YouTube.
cut that one. Sorry.
I was gonna say now you're back to YouTube. Do you see this as a problem that things are filling your idle time? Because I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, kind of. So I think it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a bad thing when I do it for like a minute. You know, like I'm waiting for my
Mm,
I don't know, for the doors of the train to open and just saying something. And I'll be like on my phone for like that 1 minute. I'm like, I could just stare out this window for a minute. It'd be totally fine. Like I feel like cutting down on this, filling my idle time will in the end improve my attention span again. Because I feel like, over the years, like it's just going shorter and shorter because of, you know, phone usage and stuff like that.
yeah.
So I think that is a bad thing. Like I don't think laying on the couch at the evening, watching a video on something. I think that's a good thing because that's just enjoyment and relaxation.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. I think that's a healthy view of this because I was gonna say I don't think getting rid of your idle time or getting rid of sort quote unquote unproductive use of idle time, I don't think that's reasonable. But I have an idea. Have you seen these? They're not really phones, but they sort of look like phones in every other way except that they either don't have a cell connection or they don't let you install apps. They're typically like organization devices. So like you wouldn't be able to open up Discord on this, but you could still whatever figure out, I don't know, directions to wherever you're trying to go. Um, does that idea appeal to you, or do you feel like you'd still find some way to like rifle through the directions or the to-do list app you have on there?
oh no, I'd probably just bring my own phone. I don't think that would work for me.
Okay, okay, yeah. Yeah, and either way that would be a big enough change. So do you struggle with cutting out those like 1 minute long distractions?
Yeah, yeah, quite a bit. Because I often feel like I just catch myself doing it, where I'm like, I'm not consciously grabbing my phone and like, opening YouTube Shorts or something.
Hmm.
Like I just do it and I'm like, oh, I'm doing it again.
Yeah, there was some
And like,
ridiculous stat that I read, which was the number of times the average person touches their phone in a given day. And a lot of times it's to look at it, but sometimes it's just like an idle, like, oh, that's my entertainment device. My hand is just naturally going to it, and I don't know. Yeah.
oh yeah, like I could just be throwing it around in my hands. Like definitely, that this thing is like, oh, I don't have anything to do at this very moment. Grab my phone, look it, there's nothing there. Okay, start flipping it around.
Yeah. Well, so, since this is mentoring and since I like talking about, okay, what is the problem? And if you agree, okay, it's a problem, then what do you want to do about this? How do you see an effective way of cutting out this 1 minute long idle time? What has worked for you? What might work for you?
Yeah, I don't know. Just not having it there, I think, is the best thing. Because like if I just can't access my phone, I don't grab it, obviously. And then I find myself, I can just stare out a window for a minute.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's just, it's always in my pocket, for convenience sake as well. So I find it hard to, just like get rid of. Like I can't leave the house and not take it with me. I feel like
Do you, out of curiosity, and this only matters because of one feature I know about, do you have an Android phone by any chance?
I do.
Okay, yeah. So uh, at least on my phone, there's a work profile that I can set, and I don't have.
Mhm.
I mean, you know what my job is right now, but I'm not using it. But I was when I was at Google. what if you made a work profile that doesn't have any of those distractions? So it's still your phone. You could still switch it out of the work profile mode, but there's one extra step now to do this. Do you think that would help?
No, because like even like my phone, actually for work we also have one of those work profiles for work, and like I'll just open my email, I'll just open Teams and just scroll through my messages or something.
Oh, what I meant,
So like,
sorry, is that you have a work profile that is not actually tied to your work. It's maybe like guest profile is a better way of saying this. That doesn't have your email, it doesn't have work email.
mm,
It's like a third no man's land that you
yeah,
I don't even know what you have in it. Maybe nothing. Maybe it's literally just a way of saying, "Hey, I've decided that for the next however long I don't want to be using apps."
yeah. I think I'd just switch back to the normal profile.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I feel like this is just really a mental thing to overcome most of anything. Like just find the willpower to do it or something.
Well, it could be the way to look at it is okay, you want to cut this down. How are the ways to cut it down? Either you mindfully stop yourself from doing it, or you prevent yourself from doing it in another way. Either by you don't have your phone, you carry a different device, you lock these apps somehow, and you need to put in some like 10-step password to be able to unlock it. And then it's just not worth the hassle of doing that. So it's got to be one of those methods. Otherwise, I don't know. But all of this is in service of you saying that you didn't want to be further reducing your attention span. What if, and I don't know that this is the case, what if I found some study that says, you know what, phone usage is totally fine. It's actually, X that's causing this to happen. Would you be like, oh, I have no problem now with the idle time? Or is there some other issue as well?
No, I'd still have the problem probably. Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, I don't think there would be a study for that. Although it's not like I know anything about this. I was just curious what's the full reason. Um, all right. Well, not to linger on this for too long, but I do think it's worth
Yeah.
looking into an option. There's probably some app out there that lets you sort of lock your phone and have a ridiculous way of unlocking it. I've heard of this for alarms. People who snooze their alarms in the morning, that they have to solve some like increasingly complicated math problem to be able to turn off the alarm. And it's like for most people that's overkill, but hey, some people need that and it exists. So maybe there's something
A
like
silly
that.
dance to unlock your phone.
So what was that?
Need to do a silly dance to unlock my phone so
Yeah,
everyone can see I'm unlocking my phone.
yeah, exactly. So I'd say look for solutions that can stop you from doing this stuff so that you don't need the self control. And I know that sounds weird, but I think we have limited amounts of self control. And when you apply it to, activities A, B, and C, you're less likely to apply it to D, E, and F. So,
Yeah.
all right, let me look at some of the other things you have on here. Yeah, back to full time work after
Yeah,
moving.
I think we covered that one.
Yeah. And want to continue on stuff
Uh,
like Route Setter or Digimon. Yeah, I still think you're in this transition mode in between two different routines. And I've said this to basically everybody now, but I think it's worth identifying when you're in a transition state so that you can cut yourself more slack and be like, look, the dust just hasn't settled yet. If you've been in the same state for 2 months or something, then okay, it's probably reasonable that you need to make a change. But for right now, who knows? You might just naturally get back to this stuff. So I'd just say keep an eye on this.
yeah, I probably will, but like I said, right now I just don't have the energy for it. I just want to sit on the couch, relax.
Yeah. And I think that's fine. And I think that the other thing too is you mentioned feeling guilty at a lot of different things. And I said that guilt isn't really a good motivator. And yet it does motivate. It's just not the best motivator. So at some point you might feel like, okay, I've been doing this for too long. Or the other thing that could happen is you exhaust the content that you wanted to watch. And I've had that happen every once in a while. Before I started at Google, I was intentionally not taking on personal projects so that I could be as like fresh as possible. So I was just consuming media and everything. And after maybe a week of that, I was just like, I'm bored. Like I don't want to do this
Mm.
anymore. So that was a unique feeling given the age we live in. Let me see if there's anything I had here that I wanted to talk about. Oh yeah, the last one that I have here, I think this is the only thing we haven't explicitly talked about, which is you had some time away. I think it was actually due to being sick though, right? Oh, and you took Wednesdays
Yeah,
off for renovations. Is that correct?
yeah,
Yeah. Have you
yeah.
put
So
more?
I was sick for 2 weeks, then I took off 2 weeks for renovation, then I took like every Wednesday off for renovation.
Yeah. Have you put more thought into doing this more regularly and more mindfully of taking some time?
I've been doing it unplanned. I think the last 3 weeks I've taken at least one midday off every week to
Mm-hmm.
like go and do something else, uh, which is pretty nice.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think there needs to be any major thing here. It's just you. I think you'd said something like you hadn't been taking the amount of vacation you could be taking. It was only the mandatory stuff you had to do. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I think this is really important because otherwise, I don't know. You know, there's like a any activity you could have. You could either do it a little bit here and there, or you could do it in bursts. And it sounded like you were not really
not
taking the
doing it at all.
vacation. Yeah, and now you're on the doing it here and there part. And who knows? Maybe
Yeah.
you eventually want to take some trip or something for 2 weeks, or just whatever, renovate the parts of your house that were low priority at the time. But yeah, I think that time off is really important. How do you feel about life in general? Is the last thing I want to ask, and I know that's a very open-ended question.
Yeah, pretty
Okay,
good. There was a thumbs up there. You looked away, but it was a thumbs up.
all
No,
right,
for sure. Yeah.
all right, cool. Then I don't have anything else. I know we're at slightly under an hour, although there's no requirement that we go to an hour. So
I want a refund.
I want a refund. All right, here's your $0 back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other thoughts on your mind at all? All right, well then, thank
No,
you.
that fly is still buzzing around.
It is. How big is this thing that you can't kill it with the electric fly swatter you got?
It's massive. It was like this big.
Okay, that's not as big
It's
as I thought it would
massive.
be.
You were
I
thinking
think
like this big?
just use a
No.
regular fly swatter. Well, good
Yeah,
talking to
it's just
you.
like one of the regular electric ones.
Yeah. Oh, I have the same. Well, my parents, I guess, had the same one. I don't really have a fly problem here. Um, yeah, good talking to you. I hope that things are on the right track, and yeah, I look forward to the next session and kind of hearing how these things are going.
Yep. Thanks. Same.
All right, cool. We'll
Thank
see you,
you.
Remy. Have a good rest of your night.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.